Excellent. Well, welcome everybody. And again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. If you're like John, you're probably disappointed. You might be missing a little bit of the hockey, but maybe you have it off to the side, not sure. Big playoffs, of course, for those of you who aren't hockey. My name is Allison, and along with my husband, Gord, we are the owners of Skydive Vancouver Island, and really excited to host another safety seminar. This is actually year 5. The wonderful things that COVID did bring to us was doing creative ways around safety reviews and safety seminars. And through that, we actually started with our own drop zone safety day through Zoom. And Erika actually was like, hey, what do you think of having something for tandems? And so it was kind of Erika and I who kind of back then were like, let's do this. So since then, we've had one for the UPT tandems and ourselves for, this is year 5, Erika?
I thought it was just year 4 since I thought we started it. Did we start it COVID or did we start it the year before COVID? I thought we started it in 2020.
Maybe something like that. I don't know. Anyways, it's been a while. Since then, we've added a whole bunch of other ones. We kind of basically have the safety seminar series for those of you who might have catched some of them. But our heart and soul definitely goes to the UPT Tandem Instructor safety review. So it's my pleasure to have you all here tonight participating. The conversation will be kind of, I think Erika and John are going to present together. They've got some polls to be engaged into, but basically for the first hour and maybe a little bit less or a little bit more, they're going to be presenting some feedback and thoughts and review for you around safety and kind of the steps into the tandem world. And then after, we're definitely going to open it up for questions and answers. That's not to say that we won't take questions and questions throughout the presentation. If you're not familiar with Zoom, there's 2 ways in doing this. One is through the little icons on the bottom. In your Zoom, you have an option there that says raise hand. And if you can see my screen, you'll see a little hand was raised. That indicates to us that you have a question, and we're able to unmute you and ask when we're ready to do so. The other option as well, oh, and then once your answers question, you can lower your hand. The other option is through our chat. So there is an option for chat in here. Please feel free, even if you want to engage in anything, obviously, hopefully keeping it professional and all those things, but questions can go in there as well. If you don't want to be unmuted or you want one of us to just address the question, we'll do that through the chat as well. We will address it live with everybody, but not necessarily having to ask you to ask the question or anything like that. But both are options. And I think that's it from the Zoom perspective. So without further delay, I'm going to introduce our 2 amazing presenters today. Erika Dufort, she has been skydiving since 2006, and I was 2004, but then left for a whole bunch of years. So too bad, we would have had a whole different relationship. But she became a tandem instructor back in 2008. I keep saying 2020, but and got her UPT Tandem Examiner rating in 2010. Aside from being the most spectacular mother and all these amazing things and moving back east and all of that fun stuff, Erika has always stayed very involved with the skydiving world. I know at our drop zone, specifically with tandems and coaching and just helping, just being a great resource that way. She's been in the sport a really long time and just some valuable stuff and a friendship I definitely cherish as well. We also have John Kieran. So John is from Skydive the Ranch. He's started skydiving in the year 2000. I think I had a baby at that time.
And I think maybe that image is from the year 2000.
It might be. It might be.
I try. I keep you all
I'll
young,
update it.
Young at heart. So he got his examiner rating back in 2021. Like I said, he's Skydive the Ranch, and his passion is with for tandem instructors. Loves what he can do to bring customers and just share that passion of what all of you guys do to someone new who might be nervous and all of those fun things. Really important to also note too, Erika and John have worked really hard behind the scenes with their relationship and just building and developing educational tools for tandems. if you don't know, I will talk about this later at the very end of the presentation as well, but they created an amazing actual safety procedure review for tandem instructors as well. I'm sure they might touch on it as well. So yeah, lots of great wealth and stuff. It's just an excitement for me to be able to introduce them both and have them work so closely with us to be able to get this information out to everybody. So without further delay, I pass the floor over to Erika and John.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'll start out by sharing the presentation. So as Allison had said, we are going to try to keep this pretty concise. So our goal with this presentation is not to overwhelm you with a lengthy discussion. Consider this sort of like continuing education. So we're not really going over emergency procedures today, but rather just a couple of hot topics that seemed to come to our attention based on the Sigma Tandem Educational Resource page and some discussion between John and myself. So we aren't gonna be discussing for too long today. We do want to remind everybody that this isn't an emergency procedures review. So we have done those in the past where we just go through everything, you know, from not being able to throw the drogue to entanglements, canopy concerns. We've done those before. We don't want to do them again. There are other platforms where you can do that. If there is an interest, we may consider doing that again. But so we did want to just indicate to you that there is a new manual that is available. This link does say 2018, but it actually is the 2024 link. So I'm assuming they just reused the same Dropbox or something for sharing of that folder. So please familiarize yourself with the new manual if you haven't done so yet. If you are really wanting somebody to walk through emergency procedures with you, John and I did a video last year, basically a very concise, it's about 45 minutes to an hour of concise emergency procedures review. So this would be a good tool to use where you actually can go through everything. You can pause it, replay it, make sure that you know the answers to stuff before we list it. And then I think at some point when John's chatting, I'll just drop a couple of other things into the chat. So if you want to, I'll share this presentation in case that's of value to anybody. I will also just share a list of the 10 emergency procedures so that you have a document that you can look through that can help rather than looking through the manual multiple pages. It's all listed on one sheet. And then I always like to share a PDF horseshoe malfunction procedure schematic because it's a bit of one of my pet peeves is that people don't tend to know how to deal very well with that emergency procedure. So we'll just move into our outline for today is, so already shared some relevant materials, some important numbers. We're going to focus very heavily on this presentation on passenger harnessing. So that's something that's come up time and time again as being something that people feel like they wanted to discuss and saw options for an area for improvement. And then I'm also going to introduce a couple of polls because I do want to see, I think there's a lot fewer people that are currently present for these in-person presentations right now because they are recorded, but I am curious just to see people's stance on certain topics and also just experience level. So as far as some numbers, again, I'm not going to bother talking you through these. You can read these in the manual, but if you happen to want to look back at this presentation, pause it or anything, these are some important numbers regarding currency levels and altitudes that you should be aware of as you move into the busy North American skydiving season. All right, so this brings me to our first poll. So if you're not familiar, it should be pretty straightforward, I think, the way that you answer these. I'm just going to pull up our first polling question. And so just go ahead and answer as accurately as you can. So I'll wait and give people wait until we get 80 or so % of people responding, hopefully, and then we'll shut it down. So I'll just give a couple more minutes for people to read through the questions and answer. So the two questions there, how many skydives did you have when you first obtained your tandem ratings? Just curious to see how many people had a lot versus a little. And then also, how many tandems do you have currently? So again, just wondering what the experience level is for attendance in this meeting. So I'll give us a couple more seconds here, and then we'll wrap up the poll. All right, I think that'll do it. All right, and then I'll share the results of this so everybody can kind of see it. So I'm not on your end. So John, are you able to show me sort of what you can see? Can you see the
All
responses
right,
there?
so it looks like about half of the people, how many skydives did you have when you obtained your tandem rating? Half about between 500 and 600. And then the next biggest group is more than 1,000, and then a couple of sprinkled, 600, 800 or so. And then how many tandems have you done roughly? The majority of people, just over half, have done more than 1,000. Some people have done 500 to 1,000, and there are a few people who have done less than 100 tandems with us.
All right. Well, thank you for participating. I also am really happy to see that that there are people that with a lot of experience attending and committed to their continuing education and just being part of the conversation. So thanks for that. One of the things I should also mention is that for any of these polls, they're going to be completely anonymous. They're not going to be used at any other time. So please feel comfortable sharing openly. These questions probably shouldn't cause anybody too much concern with answering, but there are a couple questions coming up later that if you do feel uncomfortable, John and I also really want to know about it because we personally have a lot of conversations around the culture in skydiving safety. We're aware of the concerns with where the culture is going right now, so we want to keep having that conversation. So if anybody has any concerns with answering questions openly, we also want to know about that. So, all right, so moving in, this is where John's going to take over for a few minutes talking about passenger harnessing.
So one of the things that I think that has happened over the years, we've seen, a couple of issues with some really horrendous harnessing, like Laverne, the woman who almost fell backwards out of the harness. It's been a while now, but there was a couple of people who were dropped out of harnesses for various reasons. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was this is from a flyer that UPT put out when they first launched the Sigma. And what I really like about this is that it shows on the right-hand side how a student should be sitting when they're under canopy. And what it shows is that from the hooks, it comes directly down in front of the passenger, goes straight down their front, and then straight to the leg straps underneath their thighs. You can see the back strap there that has even a little bit of slack because that's what allows your student to pick up their knees and sit back into the harness once the canopy is open. And this replaced on the left-hand side the old tandem harness that was kind of made more like what a skydiving rig is. The hip junction was further back, and it was if you had to. Sorry about that. I don't know. Let me know. Erika, can you still hear me? Just because my headphones decided to disconnect. So on the left-hand side, that harness was made a little bit more like a skydiving rig was. And what they found was a lot of students were uncomfortable, a lot of students passed out, a lot of students got sick, and they realized that by having that hip junction back and the student kind of dangling under the harness, a lot of weight was put on the femoral artery, and it was just kind of like an unnatural position to hang, especially for people who had never been in a harness before and didn't know how to make themselves comfortable. So Sigma or UPT came out with this Sigma harness that was purpose-built to try to support the weight of the passenger underneath their thighs. And that came from having the hip junction point more forward than you think it would be when you were putting together a skydiving rig. And that is kind of how it allowed the weight to be supported under those leg straps. I feel like we've gotten away from that a little bit because of some of the poor harnessing in the past. I think that moving that junction further out like you would have done in a bigger, rounder person. In the old Sigma manual, you used to have two pictures of a very trim person and a pretty round person. And they showed that on a bigger person, when they had either a bigger butt or bigger hips, you had to take that junction and move it further back to kind of encompass the hole that you might find in the gap between the leg straps and the back strap. Now I feel like more people just do that as the rule, even with trim people. And I feel like you don't need to worry about the hole in the back if a person is of a reasonable size and shape. And I think because they've defaulted that way because it's like a one size fits all. It's like, hey, if you put those junctions further back, nobody's ever going to drop anybody. But I think we're better than that. I think as instructors and myself as examiners, that if we can teach how this harness was designed and how it was made to work, that it can actually help people have better exits, have better free falls, and have more comfort for their students under canopies, and have less landing injuries because students aren't going to have as hard a time getting their legs up for landing. So here we are. So passenger harnessing, harnessing for free fall or under canopy. Can we do both? And I just lost that slide there, Erika. Because and I am actually going to shut my headphones off. Because I don't think I'm hearing anybody. So
I can hear you fine, John. You're doing good.
we should have off Bluetooth. All right, Erika, can you just talk for me to let me know if I can hear you?
I can hear you something.
All right, perfect, excellent. So harnessing for free fall or under canopy, can we accomplish both? I think we have started defaulting to harnessing just for free fall and kind of forgetting that that harness can actually do a lot for us under canopy. Also, I think we'll talk a little bit about how should final adjustments to harness to be made. As an examiner and following what the manual says, tandem students should be getting onto the plane in a jumpable configuration. There is some room for minor adjustments, but I feel like a lot of tandem instructors take too many liberties and do too much adjusting on the plane, which has multiple downstream effects. One of them is you're not getting on the plane ready to exit. Two, when people are making these adjustments, they tend to be in a sitting position, and I don't think there's any good way to get that harness properly fit when someone is hunched down or sitting. While standing or sitting, I mean, maybe in certain CASAs or Skyvans, people might be getting hooked up and doing these adjustments while standing, but I think the majority of tandems that are happening out there are probably happening when they're sitting, and it's not easy to get that harness properly adjusted while you're sitting. And is proper harness fitting different for instructors of different heights? This is a little bit of a nuanced question, and usually what I tell my candidates is there is a window of acceptability. There is no right or wrong, like perfect way to harness a person. There's wiggle room on both sides. No two tandem instructors are the same size and shape, and no two students are going to be the same size and shape. So there, you do have a lot of latitude in what you can do to get the job done. And the overall umbrella we want to be under is that we have a safe skydive, that you bring that student down safely. That being said, I think we can always do better. And just because something is good enough doesn't mean we can't do it better. So those are a couple of things that hopefully we'll be hitting along this discussion. Let's see what we have next.
So I'm just gonna, I think this is a good time to ask some people's feedback or just get people a little bit involved. So I'm gonna throw in a polling question again. Here we go. So just take about 30 seconds or a minute. So you should be able to, I don't know how well you can see the image. Can you see the image reasonably well on there, or is it really small?
It's really small.
Okay, well then here's what we're gonna do. I'm going to I thought that might be the case, so let me just pull up a different share so that we can make sure to actually see this properly. So can you still see my screen now?
Yeah, well, yes, we can see the picture on the left. And I can move the poll quiz around. So I think that's pretty good where you have it right there.
Okay, so if you can see that a little bit better, we just want to get some idea of, from what you can see here, would you feel comfortable jumping with this harness fitting? Now, don't overthink it too much, just like first glance, because obviously you can't see any of the back of the harness or the details of the leg straps. Okay,
And
and
I
I'm
think
going to go back.
one of
Sorry,
the
go
things
ahead.
I just wanted to say about this is that I don't want to get bogged down on the weeds, and this isn't a I'm right or you're right or all that kind of stuff. We just want to talk about some of the adjustments on the harness and how they can affect how it works in free fall and how it works under canopy. Because like I said, there is some latitude and everybody is going to fit together a little different. So I don't know if you could see, Erika, about 2/3 of people said that they are not comfortable with that harness, and about 1/3 said they were comfortable with that harness. And there is no right or wrong answer there, because one of the criteria that I had discussed with Erika when we were getting this together, my line in the sand is whether I would have to stop an instructor from getting on the plane or getting out of the plane with a harness, which has only happened maybe 3 or 4 times in my career that I've actually stopped somebody from progressing and being like, no, you can't get on the plane like that. I wouldn't stop that harness. I wouldn't tell someone, hey man, like you can't jump that thing. Do I think it was as good as it can be? No. I feel like that yoke and was way too far back, and I feel like the main lift webs were set up that person was going to get hooked up in the plane and then do this thing where they tighten down the main lift webs in the plane, which you can't set that harness to the proper height when you're doing it with someone sitting in the plane like that. That aside, why not get it ready before you get on the plane? I feel like that type of harness has come from laziness, from making it easier to hook on in the plane. And then so we leave the hooks way far back and with a lot of slack so that it's easy to get it hooked up. And then we just worry about getting that main lift web tight down later. That's not going to do great in an emergency exit. Because if I need to get out of the plane and the instructor in front of me is trying to get that harness into a jumper pole configuration, I feel like I'm going to push him out of the way. Because like you should have been ready to go, and you shouldn't be risking other people's safety because you didn't want to do it right the first time. So here we have another one of those questions. Do we have a separate question for this?
Going to go ahead and launch the second poll. So hopefully you can see this picture a little bit better, because it unfortunately doesn't come up very big in the actual prepared poll questions. So again, don't overthink it. Don't really heavily scrutinize. Just look at this. Which passenger harness do you feel is a better fit? A or B? Both are fine, or both require improvements. Okay, would you be all right with jumping with either of these passengers or not?
I like that we can see that 60% have participated, 70%. Wow, it's exciting.
You remember when we used to actually get excited over things that were cool?
Oh, I know.
Mm.
My favorite thing that I saw the
Right.
other day was when I was a kid, I used to watch the raindrops racing down the window, and now kids have iPads and stuff in the back of their car.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and close off this poll in a few seconds here. Still a couple more people answering.
So only about 10% have said both are fine. About 20% say both require improvement, and about 40% each said that A is good and or B is good. So
I think this is a really great demonstration of how, I mean, I think that we would probably all be able to agree that a passenger of either of these shapes and sizes is one of the easier passengers for us to contend with. I don't think there's too many people that would forego jumping with a passenger of this size. I think these are passengers that we usually prefer to jump with. They're a little easier on our bodies. They're also pretty easy to fit a harness for. And you can see that there's a pretty big divide there. These are, similar shaped passengers, but with fairly differently done harnesses. The chest straps in different locations for these two people. The front connection points are also rotated further back for passenger A and a little bit further forward for passenger B. There's a lot of differences in these harnesses, and yet there's a pretty big spectrum of people that prefer A versus B, or either of them, or neither. And so, John, what are your thoughts on those results from this poll?
Personally, and again, like I would not stop either of these people from jumping. If I saw either of these instructors heading to the plane with these students, and I have this internal monologue all the time. I go, well, that's not how I would do it, but I'm not worried about either of their safety there. On B, if that student rotates in the harness and picks up their knees and really is able to get those leg straps under their thigh, which is going to be tough with how far back those hip junctions are. But if they can get it done, that chest strap might be choking them under canopy. So I feel like that chest strap doesn't have to be that high. And then conversely on A, that chest strap shouldn't be that low. There's a lot of I try to have it so that when my student sits in the saddle, in the harness, the chest strap rides where it's not choking them, but where it's not overly low, because then it's not doing its job of holding the main lift web in front of their body. I like where the junctions are on A, but like I said, that chest strap's a little low. So I think there are some things that I would tweak, but also not like the worst I've ever seen. So yeah.
Yeah, so before I move into the next slide in our PowerPoint presentation that talks a little bit more about some of the errors that we commonly see in passenger harnessing, I think one of the takeaways that John and I want from this presentation and from this topic in general is that there can be a lot of pretty heated discussions out there on any topic in skydiving, and harnessing is one of them. And for us to just remember that there is sort of this this area of acceptability, and where we should say something is when it actually deviates outside of that, when it does pose a safety concern. Hopefully most of us recognize that neither of these harnesses are going to be a safety concern, whether there's opportunities for improvement. If it's a reasonable platform to have a conversation with somebody about, for instance, how John had mentioned that B might end up in that person's throat, depending on, if any other adjustments are made or how the harness does rotate for a seated position under canopy. Some of those conversations might not be worth it, just, in the spirit of having good culture at your drop zone.
Excuse me, John?
Yes.
Yeah, I was noticing, like when you said, for A, yes, that is a little bit low, but when that canopy is opened up, that is going to rise up a little bit too. So I think that's probably going to be pretty good.
No, for sure. But if it's a little low, and yes, it will rise up, but I also think it could be a little higher. Like I would probably meet in the middle of those two chest straps. I would have A come up, I would have B come down, and that would just, because you want to ride the balance of, you don't want a chest strap choking a student under canopy, but you don't want it so low that it might allow the main lift webs to slide off their shoulder a little bit. We've been seeing a lot of that lately, that it's kind of riding off people's shoulders. And I don't know if I forget, Erika, is there a point where we're going to specifically get to that a little later?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is one of the sections in our table.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's right. With the common problems and what they can cause. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get into that a little more later, but like that chest strap is there solely to help keep that main lift web in the correct space in front of the passenger. And when it's lower than it needs to be, it's just not doing its job up top. We don't want to undermine that and then choke someone under canopy, but like a little bit. And we're talking inches here. And that's why this is
right.
A slight improvement. And this isn't like the danger zone of, wow, that's too bad, we shouldn't be getting on the plane like that. But hopefully we're all here because we can always improve what we're doing. And just because you've done 1,000 tandems and brought people back safely doesn't mean that we can't get better. I was better at 2,000 tandems than I was at 1,000 tandems, and I'm better now than I was last year. So hope by continuing to learn and tweak and make adjustments, we're also keeping ourselves in that mindset that we're always learning and we're always trying to get better. We're not just, I know what I'm doing and I don't have to think about it anymore.
All right, and Allison, I can see the chat, so I'm going to respond to those questions
Perfect.
right now.
Yeah, and I was just going to let people know that in the chat as well, Nick Byers is Erika's partner, actually, and he's also answering some of the questions, but I know that Erika and John will address some of them as well. So that's all.
Yeah, so one of the questions that came up was just regarding sort of larger chested women. And I would argue that, and I would actually be curious to ask somebody like John, who does quite a lot of front rides, what it is like to have the chest strap. Do you always have your passengers loosened for you or only for women?
Oh, no. I personally do it for everybody. With my candidates, I let them do it because I want them to get into the habit of doing their, their checks, canopy lines, links, cables, doing their handle checks, checking their hooks, and then, going through their controllability and then working on stuff up front. If on that particular jump, there are more pressing issues, I can ride that harness without that chest strap getting undone. Like, especially if they do it properly and that main lift web is riding down the front of my body, that means the chest strap isn't overly squeezing me. So for me particularly, I can do it without letting the chest strap out. Solely for my having one flow for all my students, I open it up on everybody. And what I do is, as I come around front, I always say, hey, nicely as I can, I'm going to get us a little breathing room. And when I open it, I let the harness kind of dictate how much it opens. If someone is getting squeezed and it feels like they need a little bit of relief in the harness, I let that happen. If it's not squeezing them, then I don't do it because, again, I don't want the harness riding out on their arms or on their shoulders. So I try to let reason dictate how much we're opening there, because it's not like opening your chest strap under your sport canopy. The chest strap of the student harness acts a little bit differently. So I don't want everybody to just whale that thing open all the way. Sometimes, especially with larger chested women, it's a matter of just allowing that chest strap to go above their bust, and that way, like, it just they're not getting squeezed. You don't have to open it all the way, but it's just enough to relieve that pressure. Sometimes they can even do what I tell them to just push the harness away from themselves, and then it can go from underneath to above, and then that's enough to alleviate any discomfort.
So I just want to also note so that everybody recognizes that one of the reasons I asked that question to John is because I like to check my own methods as well once in a while. So I've done plenty of tandem courses and plenty of front rides, and I've done plenty of tandems. And me being a female, I am very cognizant of the discomfort of having a tight chest strap under canopy. I am not a heavy chested woman. And so for those, it does require that little bit more concern of where the chest strap is positioned. So you do normally want to try to make sure that it's going to end up sort of rotating above their boobs when the canopy does open. So that is a difficult thing to accomplish, though, because you don't want it too high so that it ends up in their throat, but you'd prefer not to have the chest strap also lift them on opening.
And I think
I was just gonna say, I have always loosened the chest strap for any candidate, just because that's been my experience. So it sounds like John's saying that that's, also something that he does regularly as well.
Just one thing I want to, before we kind of move on and keep going, every part of the student and instructor harness kind of works together. So it's not just one thing that can cause pressure or tightness. So there's a lot of, like, the instructor's chest strap also has a lot to do with where the main lift web sits on the student. So there are a lot of factors that can, like, cause a harness to be tight or squeezing or cause pressure. So we have multiple ways to screw it up, but also multiple ways to make it right. So there is no one way to skin a cat, but there are a couple of different ways we can go about trying to make people comfortable.
All right. Does anybody have any other burning questions regarding just, like, specifically chest straps, since we're talking about them right now? We are going to talk a little bit more about it because it is coming up on the next slide here. All right, John, take us away.
So passenger harnessing, we tried to put together some of the common errors that we see, and then what are some of the problems that those cause. And one of the main ones that I see is over tightening. And where I see this over tightening is on the student's main lift webs, and it happens after the instructor has hooked up the student. One of the ways that I talk to my students is before we get on the plane, in the drop zone, it's out of the ranch where I jump now. I walk to the plane in the loading area, whether the plane is shut down or the loading area out. If we're doing a hot load, I have my students' leg straps loose, and I leave my stuff loose, and I don't do my leg straps until I have my students' leg straps done. And that's just a habit I've made because I'm not getting on the plane with my leg straps loose, and I don't tighten my leg straps until everything is ready on my passenger. So what I do when I finish tightening my passenger is I have them stand up tall, and I say, hey, notice how everything feels kind of tight. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't inhibit you standing up, but it's there. It's secure. And then I have them bend forward and show them the slack that happens in the harness. And I say, that's how it's going to feel when we're on the plane. But remember, when you lean back and when you arch, the harness is going to be back where we want it. If they can stand up and arch and roll their shoulders and that harness is tight, it shouldn't be any tighter because that person is not going to get any shorter once they're on the plane. If that person is 5'8" and that harness is set for them at 5'8", once we get on the plane and you hook them up, if you make it tighter, now that harness is set for somebody who's 5'6" or 5'4" or 4'11". I see these people just hammering down on these harnesses. That's going to, now your student is in a harness that is too short and they're not going to be able to arch. It's going to be very uncomfortable, and it promotes bad exits. It promotes chipping, spinning, unstable drogue throws, tandem instructors getting frustrated, tandem instructors stopping to do tandems because they just can't get these exits right, and free fall just sucks. If you get the harness right before you get on the plane, one, it just makes your job easier. Two, if there's ever an emergency, all you have to do is hook up and get out. That's how we're supposed to be doing this. We're not supposed to be getting on the plane with an eye towards, oh, I'll tighten that up later once we're hooked up, because that's horrible in an emergency and you're never going to get it right. You're doing it by feel and not how it should fit on that person when they're outside of the plane. So that's probably the biggest harnessing problem that I see. Chest strap too high. Again, I feel like this is kind of a little bit of a multifaceted problem. I feel like a lot of people, just because we've just wanted to get the harnesses right. I swear, like 10, 12 years ago, it was at the point where the FAA was like, you drop one more person, tandems are done forever. So the Y strap came out, and I feel like harnessing started towards like, hey man, if you don't know how to get this right, just take those hip junctions and move them further out, and then you won't have to worry about the hole in the back of the harness that everybody was so scared about. So because that hip junction started moving to the outside of the passenger's body, they didn't really sit like that first Sigma harness picture. They weren't sitting in the harness anymore. Now they were kind of dangling in the harness, which means that chest strap didn't really move a whole lot under canopy. So that chest strap started migrating higher because, hey, it's not choking people. So why don't we have it as high as we can to help keep that main lift web under control? If the junction point is put where it should be and that student rotates, that chest strap is going to move at least 3 inches or so when they settle down into that harness. If some of these really high, position chest straps were to rotate in that harness, they'd be choking. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but I feel like if you're jumping and you're getting your student ready and that chest strap is like way up here and you're never then choking your student, I'd almost want you to then look at if you have your hip junctions too far outboard, because I think you could have their knees come up, and that way you're going to have better landings. In 15,000 tandems, I've never had a student not be able to pick up their feet for landing. The most elderly, overweight, out of shape people can extend their knee because they're not picking up their legs. All they have to do when they're sitting in the harness, like that Sigma picture, all they have to do is just extend their knee because their thigh is horizontal to the ground. If that's not what you're getting with your tandem students and they have to do full-on leg lifts, I think it's because you're not utilizing the Sigma harness properly. That also there is the hip junctions further outboard than necessary, harder for passengers to pick their knees up under canopy because they're dangling from the harness and not having that main lift web go straight down the front of their body to the outside of their leg and under their thigh in like one straight line. Now, when someone is bigger and you have rounder people, softer people, yes, you are going to have to like make do with what you have to. You have to take those junctions and move them back. The way I teach my students is I generally, and in the beginning when I'm teaching candidates, they're not doing anybody that far out of the box. I want them doing normal, average sized people just to get used to the mechanics of doing Sigma tandems. And then as they start gaining experience, they'll start jumping with people who are a little varying size and shapes. But what I tell them is put the hip junctions almost as far forward as you can, and then look at them from the side. If you have a huge gap between the back strap and the leg strap, and there's that big hole, take that junction and move it back until that gap is closed. You want it as far forward as it can be without causing a problem in the back. So if they're big and you need to move it back, move it back. But if they're small and you can move it forward, it's just going to make your job easier under canopy. And the last thing, I see this a lot, the instructor chest strap too loose. One of the main things that the instructor chest strap does is it controls where the upper connection points sit on the passenger. So if I run my tandem harness chest strap really wide, that passenger in front of me, their hooks are going to look like this, which means that main lift web isn't going to be coming up over their shoulders. It's going to be coming up across their upper arms, sometimes even falling off their upper arms. We've all seen some really gnarly looking tandems where it looks like the person is like tracking out of their harness. That's from a chest strap on the student being way too low and or an instructor's chest strap being way too loose. You can have a normal setting for your rig, but if you're jumping with a really small person, you might have to make your chest strap narrower than normal solely because the person you are taking in front of you is narrower than normal. And where you normally run your chest strap might be too wide to have that harness fit where that person is. And conversely, like if you have someone who's really wide in the chest, you could have it a little bit wider. But I tend to have mine pretty tight and then tighter if I need. I don't like it super wide because even on a big guy, you can get that harness off on their arms and it's going to be uncomfortable for them and just putting more pressure than you want. They're not going to want to have their arms out. They're going to be weird and back, and it's not going to fit a person that they're supposed to be. So those are a lot of the common errors, and then just how like they can cause problems that people don't always realize. Why doesn't my student ever arch? Oh, because you're over tightening it in the plane. You're doing it to yourself. So get the student fit properly and then leave them alone, and you'll probably have easier tandems.
So just looking at one of the questions in the chat, so just some discussion around kind of how to get the students more in that seated position under canopy, sort of using the sit back drill. So John, do you have some specific methods that you tend to use to encourage the harness into a seated position once the canopy is open?
I don't over tighten the back strap. The way I was taught to do tandems, which is 19 years ago now, was have the main lift web set to the proper height, have the chest strap and the belly band keep the main lift web in the proper orientation, as forward as you can without causing a problem in the back. The diagonals, all I do is just take the slack out of them. I don't want to disrupt what I did in the front. And then when I tighten the back strap, I tighten it almost all the way, and then I let it out just a little bit. Not so much that it would fall past someone's butt, not so much that it's going to be hanging below them, but I don't want it squeezing them. I don't want to pull the hip junctions further back. I don't want tons of tension there, because that little bit of slack in the backstrap is what allows that harness to move forward. If that backstrap is too tight, that when the student picks up their knees, those leg straps aren't going to move under their thigh because the back strap is hitting their lower back. If there's a little bit of slack and there's no measurement for it, like, how tight should the laterals be? Tight enough. How tight should that back strap be? Tight enough or loose enough so that it doesn't flop, but it allows your student, when they pick their knees up, and then with maybe a little bit of help, I always tell people, nicely as I can help you move those leg straps. I have them pick their knees up, and sometimes I say, nope, higher, bring your knees towards your chest, and I'll even bump the leg straps forward a little bit. I'll just say kind of wiggle back and forth, and you'll feel the leg straps will slide a little bit and then no further, because the back of the student then hits the back strap. So you don't want it over tight, because that back strap is not holding them in the harness. Their leg straps are holding them in the harness. The back strap is there to keep a huge hole from developing in behind the harness, but also to allow that main lift web and hip junction to move forward a little bit, so that they can sit there. And these are things that you can practice on the ground. If your drop zone doesn't have a hanging harness, it's pretty easy, man. Like, chains or just some leftover webbing thrown over a girder, a beam, or a tree, and you can make something that you could hang a tandem harness on and then put a student and hooked up with, and then practice that on the ground. It's one of the biggest tools that I use in my courses, is doing the loosening the lowers and then reattaching them, getting the student ready, and then going through the opening drills while we're just hanging in a harness on the ground, because you have all the time in the world. You can make adjustments. You can see how things work. You can pull handles the way that it would feel for an actual tandem without being in the air and without putting yourself at risk. So if you feel like you're having a hard time with that, see if you can't figure out a way to get a hanging harness, and then do some adjustments to the harness, and then see what kind of, results those adjustments make.
And I think that's the really big piece, is that we can go through this and we can do a lot of tandems successfully without realizing the possible discomfort or the ways that we can improve. Because even if you've done thousands of tandems, if you don't know that some of these small nuances, for instance, the chest strap, for a lot of people, your own chest strap width does make a big difference. It's not something that I would have ever noticed, because my chest strap inherently is always going to be pretty small. I don't have very big shoulders, so people aren't really going to be escaping that width. But trying to give some thought. I know, we all tend to be pretty strong personalities in skydiving, but giving some thought to ways that you can improve the passenger experience, I think is valuable.
Another one of the things I do is that when I do my early season or rating renewal, emergency procedure reviews, not only do I have instructors in the instructor harness and in a rig, I have the instructors in the passenger side, because sometimes they haven't done a front ride in 5, 10, 15 years. So it's a good time to get back in a harness. And maybe they're like, oh man, like, is this what it feels like when I put a student in a harness? That kind of sucks. So, we're on the back end of it, and tandems are real comfortable in the back. They're uncomfortable because you don't have a rig in the front, but also can be uncomfortable based on how that harness is done. A tandem student harness is never perfect. I don't think it's ever as good as wearing your own rig, but it can be pretty good, but it can also be really bad. So maybe put a student harness on and have one of your instructors tighten it up and get a feel for what it's like. Just to get on one of my pet peeves, have an instructor get you in a harness where you think it's good, and then sit down, and then have that instructor tighten it down like you or they would, and then stand up, and then feel the difference that makes. And that's what you are putting your students through. Sorry about that. But yeah, like if you can't, put yourself in their shoes and then just get a feel for it, because it might just change the things that you thought were necessary and make you realize that they weren't really necessary.
All right, thanks, John. So that concludes the majority of the chat that we had regarding harnessing. And even something as, one topic out of the whole spectrum of tandems, we're not even really talking about emergency procedures right now. We're just talking about proper harness fitting. We've just spent about 45 minutes on this, and I still feel like we've only, talked about it in some detail. So if any of you have any really, any brief questions or anything that you want to discuss regarding harnessing, please, we don't have a lengthy presentation. We only have a few other things to discuss here. So we do have some time for some questions if you have them right now. Otherwise, we'll move into one other polling question that I have. So just make sure that there isn't any other questions, and I'm going to move into another polling question.
And just a reminder for you guys who might not have heard, in Zoom, if you have a question, you can use the option of raise hand down on your icon tools. And then, of course, once we've answered your question, lower hand. It just helps us actually because it puts you to the top of the list for me knowing that you have a question. Otherwise, definitely please use the chat function as well. Between myself, Erika, John, and Nick, we're all monitoring that too.
All right, and so now I'm just going to launch this next poll. So out of curiosity, and again, I hope you'll feel comfortable answering this.
It is anonymous. We don't know who answers what.
And it's not going to be shared in any way. How do you manage the lower attachment points under canopy? So usually disconnect and reconnect to self, usually disconnect and reconnect to the passenger harness using those little plastic tabs. I usually disconnect and leave hanging, depends on the situation, or prefer not to answer.
So we are about 60% answered.
And Erika and John, I should note too that not everybody on this call is a tandem instructor. We actually have some camera flyers on here as well, because it was definitely encouraged for camera flyers to join, because it's always nice for them to know too. So just in case you're not wondering why it might not be 100%.
Nice. I just want to put that I am not here as a cop for UPT. I am not here to try to not get anybody in trouble, but I'm not making this a political. I know this is kind of like for tandems, a little bit of a hot button thing, but we have about 60% of people say I usually disconnect and reconnect to myself. About 35% say I usually disconnect and reconnect to the passenger harness. And one or two people said depends on the situation. Nobody said I usually disconnect and leave hanging, which is awesome. There have been multiple incidents in the past where from the days of just disconnecting and leaving them hanging, there have been fatalities from a toggle getting hooked on that dangling lower connection. So I'm glad that has gone the way of the dodo. For a long time, it was acceptable to disconnect and then reconnect to the little hangers on the front of the harness because it kept them from being dangling. And now getting hooked on a toggle was no longer a problem. As per the UPT manual now, the procedure is to disconnect, loosen, and reconnect to the instructor harness. Because one, that now takes care of a loose and dangling connector and it's not going to get caught on a toggle. But in the event of a cutaway below your what do we call that? The controllability check, like somebody flies through your canopy or you get into a malfunction, like put yourself in line twist, have a canopy collapse where you are still high enough to cut away. It's better to have those on than to have a cutaway where you and your student separate. And then in some bad landings, there was an injury where the tandem instructor flipped over the student and I think either broke their neck or caused some major injury. To take off my examiner hat for a minute, I get it. That's probably a minuscule problem. But the way UPT is approaching it is what's the downside of hooking up the bottom? My major downside is it makes getting up and unhooking the student a little more burdensome. But to just be in line with what the manual says. At the end of the day, it's not something that makes my job incredibly hard. Do I think there's someone out there with a spotting scope looking for everybody to make sure they do that? No, because I feel like there are major other problems with tandems that we have to worry about. But just to throw it out there, the manual does say to reconnect to the student. That's how I train all my candidates.
Reconnect to yourself. The manual says to
Reconnect. Oh yes, reconnect
self.
to the instructor harness. I apologize. Tom Noonan, when he was alive, his goal was that everybody new would just get trained that way, and everybody old who used to do it the old way would eventually phase out, and then eventually everyone would just rehook to the instructor's rig, and then life would move on, and it wouldn't be such a contentious issue. So there you go. It's a contentious issue. I'm glad people do something with them.
So what I'll say regarding this is that I'm really pleased and actually very surprised to see so many people on this call actually following the new protocols based on the manual of reconnecting to themselves. So what that tells me is that while it's an inconvenience, it's something that can be adapted to. So what I would suggest to anybody that does feel like it's, you know, a burden and unnecessary, I would suggest that you try it. Set some number of jumps that you're going to try it for, say, or a day, you know, for 1 day of tandems that you're going to try doing this other method, or some number, depending on, you know, what kind of drop zone you're at, whether you're only doing a couple jumps in a day, but commit to trying it for a period of time so that you can at least see if it can be adapted to and see if you can work it into your routines. We all tend to get pretty used to our routines and our muscle memories. And I think that if you try it, you'll probably find that you can adapt to it. As John said, it's a pretty small risk that is being alleviated by using this new protocol. If you can adapt to it, then it does eliminate that little bit of risk by adding that small inconvenience of, yeah, the disconnection piece under, you know, once you've landed.
All right.
All right. All right. Are there any questions? Anybody want to know more around that connection piece? The only other question, I've got a couple other polls I'm going to ask. So this next question is regarding your emergency procedures practice. So we might need to explain this question a little bit more, but have you ever practiced an emergency procedure, not just handles touches, but truly visualizing an emergency procedure while in free fall? So this could be on a tandem or on a sport jump.
So what I do when I didn't have video on a jump is I would maybe nerdily get excited that like, oh, I get to practice on this one. So I would get out, throw the drogue, check the drogue, do my handle checks. And then while in free fall, I would check my secondary and be like, oh no, I'm having a hard pull. And then go to my primary and go, oh no, I'm having a hard pull. And then I would go to both. Oh no, I'm still having a hard pull. And then I would stop, take a breath, decide, all right, I have a closed container. And then I would do a fake reserve pull in free fall. I would do that for my closed container malfunctions. I would do it for my open container malfunctions. So I would be in free fall and go, you know, oh my God, my closing loop broke or something happened back there where I just have a mess over my shoulder. And I would go, here's my RSL, here's my cutaway, I've released my risers, and now I go and pull my reserve. Or, hey, I just threw my drogue into my buddy out there. So I give him a couple of seconds and then I strip down the right side. So I physically go through free fall while I am touching those handles, because we can practice on the ground, but it feels different in the air. That RSL flops around. It's not exactly where you would think it would be. And man, reaching for risers and getting that feeling of what it would be like to actually clear risers is kind of weird. And I hope I never have to do it in real life. But this way we can practice it on jumps when it's not really an issue. So we got about 80% in, and I would say about 70% have said they have done that and 10% haven't. So for anybody who hasn't, give it a shot. Start with maybe just a closed container, like you're having a hard pull. fake a pull the other side, fake pull both, and then go here and pull the reserve to just get a feel for, like, handle checks are great. Hey man, nothing got dislodged. My handles are where I want them. I'm balancing in drogue fall. Those are great. We should be doing it on every jump and just be a normal, like, hey, is my rig in good shape before I move on with my skydive? But for actual emergency procedures, try giving that a shot, because it's going to open up your awareness a little bit and just maybe change how you think about those things.
All right.
What do you think about that, Erika?
I mean, I agree. And I think I'm actually, again, really pleasantly surprised by how many people have done this. I'd really, I obviously need to give the skydiving community more credit. I'm really impressed that 70% of people have done this. When John originally asked this question, he wanted it to be a lot more specific. And I thought, I just think there's a lot of people that won't have even ever tried doing emergency procedures in a realistic free fall type situation. So I'm happy to see that that there's a lot of people that are interested and that are out there doing it. I would say the second piece of that is also doing that when you're under canopy, right? So trying, again, like some of you, if you ever end up on a jump with, with a loved one or something, that's a good time to kind of practice what it's like to touch your handles when you're under canopy as well, right? You can do that a lot more easily with any passenger, but that one I would say also a lot more realistic than when you're doing it on the ground, touching handles.
Hopefully everybody is touching their handles under canopy as part of their overall controllability and canopy check. But I think separate from that is actually both handles and faking, all right, cutting away, am I cut away? Are the risers gone? Now I pull my reserve because when I open, I look up canopy lines, links, cables. I just do a quick handle check. I kind of feel my cutaway, my reserve. I reach inside. I feel my RSL, but that's not an emergency procedure. That's me. I do my handle checks in free fall, and then I do my handle checks under canopy. But I try to then do a separate, what if I had to cut away right now? And this one is almost a little tougher because now you have stuff going on. You have a student that you're talking to, you have a spot you're trying to get back from, you have a canopy that you're dealing with. So sometimes we don't have time to actually sit there and go through an emergency procedure. So like Erika said, maybe you're taking someone, a friend or somebody like that up on a jumper, for whatever reason, this could be a good time to just have a couple of seconds. I always joke that I was doing tandems for 18 years, and I think it was last year, I had my first person ever pass out under canopy. And I had always said that if I ever had anybody pass out under canopy, I was going to take that time to untwist my brake lines, because I always plan on doing it on a jump, and then I can't do it, or I wind up spinning it the wrong way, and I go, I'll just deal with it on the ground. So there are a lot of things going on under canopy, but this can be an emergency procedure practice also, given the right circumstances.
Erika, I was just going to add, there is something that you had said several years ago, actually, on one of our safety days about, how often we look for the time on our cell phone. You pick it up, you look at it, you put it down, and then like a minute later, you're like, what time was it? And you had given the suggestion of, practicing on a regular basis, whether you're in a malfunction or not, is looking at your altitude and actually saying it out loud, 3,200 feet, and then going about your business. And that's something that, we've incorporated it with all of our students and all of that stuff and jumpers, but it was, such a good piece and relatable piece of advice. And it has helped people in malfunctions where they've utilized that. So just something that I was like, oh, that could practice as well.
Oh,
Thanks,
I want to raise my hand here in that I was doing a course, and my candidate and I on a level 5 had a malfunction, and I actually, while he was going to cut away, swatted his hand out of the way and did it myself. And Tom Noonan was alive at the time, and I had called him and asked him about it, and he goes, "Oh, what altitude were you at?" And I was like, "No idea. I did not care. I just dealt with it, and I freaked out." And he was like, "Well, Mr. Examiner, maybe you should actually practice reading your altimeter and allowing your candidate to have first crack at that next time." And he's like, "Maybe you'll never get that chance again." But like, hey, I mess up with the best of them. So that I was a very new examiner and totally didn't care what altitude it was because it was time to go. So yes, we can all take time to try to practice these skills. No matter how much experience we think we have, we can always find some way to improve.
Yeah, I think what John just said is even with 18,000 plus tandems, being a tandem examiner was a new experience for him.
Yeah.
All right. So we're coming into the wrap ups. So this is our pretty standard spiel regarding concluding thoughts. So there isn't any replacement for currency. I do always like to say that one of the reasons that we do need to rely on things like the UPT manual and the procedures is that they're not reliant on anecdotal evidence. So each of us can probably come up with one experience that we've had that is the reason why we deviate from the process, whatever that may be. The manual and the procedures that are outlined by UPT, however unpopular, are meant to sort of reduce liability, and they are based on the way that things tend to be able to be done in the most safe way possible. So that's one of the reasons that if you are starting to deviate from procedure, maybe just check your motives, check the reasons why you're doing it. If there was just that one experience that you had, just try to put it in perspective.
I would just like exactly as Erika said, we probably all know someone who maybe they were in a car accident once and that seatbelt hurt them. And then they go, I'll never wear a seatbelt again. By the numbers, even if you've had a bad experience or an anecdotal thing happening, if you want to put your odds in the best favor of having a good outcome, the procedures that are in the manual are going to do that. So like Erika said, if you think you know better, maybe just ask why, or, I'm always open for discussion. At the end of the day, it's not my program. I'm not giving people John Kieran's tandem rating. I'm giving them a UPT tandem rating. So to minimize your liability and also go with the rules that are written in blood for a reason, follow what's in the book and practice what's in the book. And that way it's not a thing you have to make up on the fly. It's just that it's what you do, and that will probably be the best possible outcome.
Want to take our last bullet here, John?
So remember, our tremendous responsibility as tandem instructors is to the passenger and skydiving community at large. Part of one of the things that I've been hearing over and over from numerous people who are trying to improve tandem safety and just skydiving in general is the culture around tandems between professionalism and just the overall gravity of what we're doing. I think tandem is different. In every other skydiving discipline and every other instructor rating, the person you are teaching and dealing with has their own rig. They're on their own. You get down to the hard deck with that AFF student, peace. Good luck, buddy. You got an AAD. I know it's like we want to help them, but you also, hey, man, I have a parachute. You have a parachute. You signed a waiver. That's what it is. In tandems, we don't have that. This student, this person, this passenger, whatever you want to call them, they have no idea what's going on. And no matter what they sign away in liability, I don't know if they ever really understand the consequences of what can happen. That's between them and their lawyer. But you can, as a tandem instructor, do your best work and keep this responsibility in the forefront of your mind to just bring them back safely. On top of that, give them a good skydive, give them a good experience. We all do this because we love skydiving, and it was there for us because people before us somewhat kept it safe or didn't screw it up bad enough that it was then gone before we got there. It's not going to be there if people don't take this stuff seriously. We all joke about being meat haulers and the birds out tandem instructor and all that. Maybe I'm the anomaly. I love doing tandems. I love what I do. I'm still a full-time tandem instructor. I go to work every day, and I love taking people on jumps. I love the nuts and bolts of tandems. Like I found what I love. part of that is because I took it so seriously and I wanted to give that student the best possible experience, not only from the amount of energy that I gave to them, but just doing the job as good as I can. I take pride in every landing. I take pride in every harness. And because of that, I'm always trying to improve. If you keep that in the forefront of your mind of being a tandem instructor, you will care. Like it just, not to like take it down a notch, but like just give a shit. I see some people who just shouldn't be doing tandems anymore. And if that's the case, like, I don't know, man, like go get a job doing something else because I don't want to see people who are just going through the motions and not really giving that job the gravity that it needs. So in order to try to build this culture, just always remember what you're doing, how important it is. And if you need the motivation, think about how much the rest of your life would suck if you really hurt or killed somebody on a tandem skydive. You would destroy that person's life, you would destroy that family's life, and then you would have to go on for the rest of your life knowing that because you didn't do your job good enough, people's lives were ruined. So take that into account with the wins that you jump in. The longer I'm doing tandems, the shorter my threshold of what I will jump in is. When I look at what I'm doing for the season, I don't think about how many jumps am I going to do in a day or how many jumps I'm going to do in a weekend. I think about how many jumps I'm going to do in a season. And I've really started coming up with, hey man, these people on this somewhat windy day, do I want to make the money? Sure. But guess what? They're going to come out next week on a better day. So why am I going to fight to do it today when we could just do it on a better day? So building, and I know drop zone owners are also sometimes a barrier with that, but we can also make them an ally with that. I've done a lot of work with Joe Richards, who owns the ranch, who I've worked through for a long time. And I always tell him, like, man, what do you need to make this money today, or we could just make this money tomorrow? Is it worth the liability and is it worth the risk of pushing our luck on a marginal day when we could just come out another day? Most people who come out to skydive, they're gonna skydive with you, whether it's today or whether it's another day. So just give yourself that professional, like reasonable courtesy to just be like, what do I want my legacy to be when I hang up my tandem rig? That I hurt a bunch of people and pushed the limits and maybe made poor choices, or that I never hurt anybody and had tons of great skydives and just improved people's lives. So I want to build that culture of just professionalism and just getting people to just care a little bit more about something that I feel is just super important.
All right, and this is where if I had a cane, I would have pulled John off.
Nice. Sorry, I
halfway
ranted
through that because I hope you all get the point. So a couple of things we're going to do here. We did have a question that was asked, so I do want to open it up for some discussion. So we're going to answer the question that was in the chat, which was just regarding passenger versus instructor boarding first. Before we do that, I'm just going to launch a poll and I'm just going to leave it active throughout the remainder so that you don't have to answer it right away. It's basically just asking what sorts of topics you would really like to see covered. So please feel free to answer that before you leave us here today. And please feel free to stay with us for a bit longer. I've otherwise just here have some contact information for myself, for John, as well as for Drop Zone owner Allison Cooney with Skydive Vancouver Island. If you want to reach out to any of us, we're also all available on Facebook with any other questions or concerns you may have. We're often very willing and open to chatting. John and myself don't agree on everything, but we have some really good debates about it and we're able to see each other's perspectives. So I'll leave it at that. And then I will just bring in this other question that came up in the chat. Thank you for asking it. So the question very specifically was whether the tandem instructor or student should board the aircraft first, and just thoughts on this. John and I ended up talking. John and I talked about this following. This also came up in the Sigma Tandem Instructor Educational Resource page. There was quite a bit of debate on that page regarding this topic. And when John and I discussed it, my overwhelming feelings were that it isn't something of great importance, so I don't actually attribute much weight to it. I can honestly say I don't have much of an opinion, and that's because I don't see that this has been something that statistically needs to be addressed. We haven't really seen many issues with a student running back to get something, or like what exactly could happen between the period of time where an instructor goes in first and then the student follows. So I don't really see a lot of an issue with this. I think it comes down to passenger communication, involving them in the process so that they know if you are getting in before them. This is going to be most common in a Cessna type drop zone where you get in before your student, although also just as easily quite frequent in a Twin Otter or otherwise, since you're getting in first and letting them sit in front of you. I think as long as you're having that open communication, I don't see an issue with either way. I think this comes down to each person's anecdotal, personal perspectives. And to say I don't care probably sounds incorrect, but I just don't think that it's worth us having a big debate unless we started seeing a negative outcome from doing it a certain way.
I would just say do it safely. Control your student, whether that means that, like, you know, I jump in an otter, and I've done it both ways just because of kind of different scenarios. I tend to follow my student up, but there are times where I go up and help my student into the plane, block their head from hitting the bar, but I'm not so far away that I don't have, you know, a reasonable amount of control of them. So I don't want to see instructors just, hey, follow me, and then they run into the plane and sit down and their student walked away or hit their head or whatever. So just be within arm's reach of your student and just control your student and do what makes sense. Like, I don't think, like Erika said, there should be a hard and fast rule one way or the other, but just try to control your student and don't let them get away from you. But I think you can do it from both sides.
Josh was the one that had posed the question. Do you want to either type or speak up just to say if there's anything, if you have a specific opinion on it, or, you know, because that's part of what John and I like to do. We like to argue about things that we don't agree on.
Yeah, like, is there a thing that you see that causes you to have one view or the other? And like, what plane is it in? And yeah.
So what I would say, what I have seen from drop zone owners that don't like the instructor getting in first is just I think they see a liability of it. I think they you know, have some concern around prop strikes. And again, since I haven't seen that, the very limited examples that there have been in practice, I don't even think have been by tandem passengers being struck by the propeller. So drop zone owners, I think, tend to have an eye around liability, and John and I both said communication with your passenger.
And I think it can also come down to just giving that student or passenger a little bit of feeling of, hey, this guy gives a shit. If the instructor just goes, oh, follow me, and then they turn their back on them, even though that student might follow them in and everything is perfect, they might just get that little feeling of like, oh, does this dude really care? Because I feel like he kind of just left me. Whereas if you are there with them and facing them, whether from inside or outside, and you can go, hey, man, come on in, watch your head. It just, if you're constantly there and constantly engaged, it gives them a better experience, and you are also controlling the student. So I think it's just that personal engagement with the passenger can come from either side. But Josh had said he was just, you know, interested based on the discussion that was on the Sigma resource page.
All right, so I think I'll invite Allison to stop the recording, and we can continue having some, if anybody else just has some conversation pieces, some things that they want to discuss. John, how are your Islanders? How did that work out for you?
Oh man, they let in a penalty shot on what apparently was putting your hand down on the puck in the crease, but people are saying it was just a hand pass. But as of right now, second intermission tied 3-3. So
okay, well, we might lose John pretty quickly then. It's possible that John's going to need to jump off and go be a hockey fan instead.
No
but I think he can probably make himself available for a few more.
I don't know. I might lose my playoff beard. I actually shaved last week, and this all came in within a week.
Well, I mean, right off the bat, Erika, John, thank you again so much for your time, knowledge, and just also your passion for wanting to share that to everybody. I can't thank enough everybody who took the time out of their evening to join us on this call. You know, it's super exciting that we can come from all over the world and, you know, have a common passion and purpose around safety. On behalf of myself and my husband Gord at Skydive Vancouver Island, I hope you all have an amazingly safe season. And I am going to stop this recording, and then we can have some chats.